In terms of a number of games on the Switch, from a single series or franchise, your first thought might go to The Legend of Zelda or the Super Mario series, and you'd be correct in that thought, as those two have a ton of games on the hybrid console. But there's another name that you need to add to that list, and his name is Kirby. There's been a number of Kirby games released on the Switch, from amazing new games, to smaller entries, to even re-releases from the series past. And in today's video, we're going to take a look back at every single one on the Switch in order of release. Kirby's first game on the Switch arrived in March of 2018, and it was called Kirby Star Allies. This was the 12th mainline entry in the series, and featured the gimmick of Kirby being able to recruit allies to help him in his adventure by throwing hearts at his enemies. These allies are controlled by the game's AI, but they can also be controlled by other players, allowing for co-op play. Kirby can combine his abilities with his allies for new fusion abilities, as well as perform friend actions on certain stages. Finally, there's a Dream Friend system that allows the player to call upon special characters from past Kirby games like King Dedede and Meta Knight. Now, the game itself wasn't as well received as Nintendo hoped when it came out. Reviews felt that the game lacked some depth, as well as some reviewers felt that it had a severe lack of difficulty, even when compared to other Kirby games. Luckily, a lot of this was addressed with updates and free content, and coming from someone who played it after it came out, I can say that it did improve the game a lot. Kirby's next game on Switch would be for the NES app on the Nintendo Switch Online service. Kirby's Adventure is the second game in the Kirby series, and the first one to have the series' trademark powers of Kirby being able to obtain powers and abilities by eating certain enemies. The game itself is a fantastic game, truly showing off the best that Nintendo could do on the NES back in 1993, and it has a lot of levels, a lot of replayability, and it honestly blew the first game out of the water. Many consider this game to be one of the best NES games ever made. Kirby's next game ended up being a free-to-play game that is the sequel to Team Kirby Class Deluxe for the 3DS. Super Kirby Class is an action role-playing game where you play as Kirby and team up with other Kirbys to take on bosses and different challenges. Players can pick a role, such as using a sword, hammer, or attacking with magic, as well as players can equip different armor and weapons they obtain through gameplay. The game does have online multiplayer, though input lag is a major flaw, and it's highly dependent on players' connections. The game also does feature microtransactions, being a free-to-play game, though to be honest, I played a ton of this game and never really found the need to spend a dime. When the Super Nintendo app for the Nintendo Switch Online service arrived in the September of 2019, two Kirby games were included in the original launch. Kirby's Dream Land 3 was the first one, and this was Kirby's last mainline adventure on the Super Nintendo. This game improves upon the Animal Friend system introduced in the second Dreamland game for the Game Boy. Kirby can team up with different allies to gain various new abilities, such as flying quickly, a triple jump, or the ability to run faster and not slip on ice, as well as obtain new variations on his copy abilities. The second Super Nintendo game featuring Kirby to arrive on Switch was the spin-off game Kirby's Dream Course. This is a miniature golf game that sometimes feels like a sports puzzle game of sorts. It has you playing on various courses while collecting power-ups and hitting enemies from the Kirby series. At times this game can be tough, but it's still fun and one of Super Nintendo's better titles that isn't an action game. Kirby's next adventure on Switch would also be another game added to the Super Nintendo Switch Online service. Kirby Superstar is one of Kirby's best adventures, and one of the very best Super Nintendo games out there. The game itself is split across different smaller games, 8 games in all, 6 smaller primary adventures, 1 arena mode, and mini-games. It's fantastic with its gameplay and variety, and it's honestly one that every Kirby fan needs to play. Kirby Fighters 2 is a platform fighting game using the Super Kirby class engine as well as its assets, and is a direct sequel to Kirby Fighters Deluxe. The game was mostly developed during the COVID pandemic. There's different playable Kirbys, each with different abilities from prior Kirby games, as well as additional characters such as Meta Knight and King Dedede that players can play as. The best way to describe this game is it is sorta like Smash Bros. Lite, just featuring the Kirby series. Kirby's next major adventure would be his biggest yet. Kirby in the Forgotten Land came out in March of 2022, and it featured something that had yet to happen in a mainline Kirby game. It was completely playable in full 3D. Usually when 2D games traditionally move into the 3D space, there's always a risk of things not panning out so well. This game shattered expectations. It's a phenomenal game, with well-designed levels, fun new abilities called Mouthful Mode, transformations, as well as just the game being a beautiful looking game overall. This is simply one of Kirby's best games ever. Kirby 64, The Crystal Shards, arrived for the Nintendo 64 app on the Nintendo Switch Online service in May of 2022. This was a mainline entry and Kirby's only game on the N64. It also was the first game to feature 3D graphics. The game is played from a 2.5D perspective and is similar in gameplay to the other mainline games. What was different this time though is the power combo system that allows Kirby to mix powers together to form new powerful ones. It's a fun game, just a little short in length. When it originally came out years ago, it got average to favorable reviews, but I think as time has gone by, it's been viewed in better light these days, as evident with the positive reaction with the re-release of the game on the Switch. Kirby's Avalanche, also known as Kirby's Ghost Trap in Europe, was another spin-off game to arrive on the Super Nintendo app on the Switch. It is the Western release of the Japanese game Super Pure Pure, just now reskinned with a Kirby theme. The game itself is just like any other Pure Pure game. Colored blobs fall from the top, and you need to arrange them in matching groups to cause them to disappear. Pure Pure is awesome, regardless of having a Kirby theme or not, so it's an excellent puzzle game to have on the NSO service. Kirby's last game in 2022 ended up being a party game. In Kirby's Dream Buffet, you take control of a ball-shaped Kirby as you roll through courses filled with food in order to collect as many strawberries as you can. You can gain abilities, as well as attack enemies and even other players. Certain events in-game include racing, various mini-games, and even a Battle Royale mode. In addition, the game's multiplayer modes can be played through both local and online play. It's a fun but simple game featuring the Kirbster. Early on in 2023, the amount of classic games available on the Nintendo Switch Online service finally expanded to include Game Boy games. And from day one, gamers got to play Kirby's first game, Kirby's Dream Land. Now this game doesn't feature Kirby's trademark copy powers. Now all Kirby can do is fly, suck up enemies, and either spit them back out or just swallow them whole to eliminate them. He does get access to a few power-ups through food that he can obtain through gameplay. This is a short adventure. It was designed with beginner players in mind, but players who do get through the game can at least attempt to beat it again through a much harder difficulty with a code given to the player once they beat the game the first time. Kirby's next adventure was an enhanced remake. Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe is a remake of the classic Wii game with brand new features such as improved graphics, including a new visual style, the new Merry Magoland mode for minigames, a new Epilogue Extra mode, new copy abilities, and more. The original release is seen by many as one of the better games out there, featuring the pink puffball, so it definitely isn't a bad thing to have a more improved version of the classic for gamers to enjoy. 1 month after the launch of the Game Boy app, Kirby's Dream Land 2 arrived for the Game Boy side of the NSO service. Kirby's Dream Land 2 is a much bigger game than the first game, and it featured Kirby's trademark copy powers from Kirby's Adventure, but it also included animal friend allies. Kirby can ride these animal friends to gain access to new abilities and even allow for new attacks and powers if he already has a ability himself. Kirby Tilt and Tumble arrived for the Game Boy app on June 5th of this year, and it instantly stood out from others, considering the original game cart was made with a built-in accelerometer. Back in the day, you had to tilt the Game Boy in order to guide Kirby around in this game. On the NSO app, the Joy-Cons, or Pro Controller, mimics this ability through gyro controls built into the controllers. It's pretty neat that they did this. It's a good action puzzler game, and I'm glad that players can experience it without needing to chase down original carts or hardware. The latest game to arrive for Switch from the Kirby series is actually a game that came out in Japan last year. Kirby Star Stacker arrived for the Super Nintendo app just a few days ago, while in Japan, they've had it for the Super Famicom app since July of 2022. This game itself was a game that never came out in the West. It was originally a Japan exclusive, and over here, we just got the Game Boy version. So yeah, this is the first time the West has ever gotten a chance to play this game. The game itself is a falling block puzzle game, where the goal is to remove star blocks by placing matching animal friends from Kirby's Dream Land series on the end of each of the blocks to score points. Now, it's cool that we got this game, but unfortunately, it is not translated, but luckily, it's easy to figure out what to do. So what's in store for Kirby on the Switch in the future? Well, we know for a fact that the Game Boy Advance game, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, will arrive in the future for the GBA side of the NSO service. This was confirmed a while back when the app was announced earlier this year. Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is a really unique game too. It's a bit Metroidvania-like, with its maze layout and the ability to go almost anywhere you please. Beyond that game, there's nothing else confirmed, and considering we are nearing the end of the Switch's lifespan, I can't imagine there being a new major release. What I can hypothesize is the fact that we'll probably see a few more Game Boy and Game Boy Advance entries to the NSO service. There's Kirby Pinball Land, Kirby's Block Ball, and the Game Boy version of Star Stacker, as well as a GBA remake of Kirby's Adventure called Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. These are all possibilities of games arriving in the future. Anyway, I hope you like this little look back at all the awesome Kirby games on the Switch. And with that said, which game is your favorite Kirby game? Feel free to post your answer in the comments down below. If you liked the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you like Nintendo or Switch stuff, then make sure to subscribe, as there's new videos that come out each and every week on the channel, and you definitely don't want to miss a single one. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next video.